It's Friday afternoon in Sydney, and that means it's time for Friday Beers with Mark and Stuart. Mark, you're going to ask me about my red shirt?
Yeah, straight away, actually.
Yeah. So,
what's up with that?
Well, it impressed me, your level of commitment to your beloved AS Amsterdam. And I've never been really interested in football. I grew up in Newcastle, and the only game we played was rugby league.
Right.
But I've been inspired by you to actually start following Champions League. Well, that presented a problem. What club to follow? Now, I'm 1/8 German, so that limited down to about 4 clubs. And obviously, Bayern Munich is the star of the Bundesliga, so it was easy to
easy
to go from there.
So how did you go?
Well, we had a good opening for the championship. Faced off against Red Star in Belgrade yesterday. This morning in our time in Munich, it was a 3-0 wipeout to the Serbs. They did do some good defending. The Germans play no-nonsense football, particularly Bayern Munich does. Right. The goals weren't particularly spectacular, but they had the usual suspects there. Rob Lewandowski got one of them. Thomas Muller one right at the close.
I'm impressed. You know the next one.
I'm getting an expert at this one.
Right.
Milan Borjan for Red Star was about the only decent guy they had on the field, stopping more goals from going in. But look, it's not a game I'd go to on the replay if you've got Optus Sports. Enough said on that one. The real sport going on at the moment is in the oil markets, Mark. What's going on there?
Yeah, big news on Monday. Was it Monday? It was Monday.
Right, yeah.
So Saudi oil installations got hit by Houthi rebels out of Yemen.
Who, sorry?
Houthi rebels.
Houthi, right.
Houthi. Not Houthi and the Blowfish, but just Houthi rebels.
Excuse me.
Hey, what's happening?
Are you Hootie?
And this struggle's been going on for years.
Right.
But these guys are backed by Iran, and so drone strike on Aramco's installation, taking out about 5% of their capacity.
Right.
Global capacity, actually.
I once played Iranian bingo.
Iranian bingo.
Yeah, do you know how you can tell you're playing Iranian bingo?
No, how does that go?
A10, B52, F22, C130.
I like that one.
Now, what's interesting about this? I reckon the global economy is fireproof now. It used to be an attack like this would potentially cripple the world economy. You're suddenly shutting off a whole bunch of energy. The price of oil is lower than it was in late September of last year. $58 a barrel, West Texas Intermediate.
Yeah.
You want to get some good background here? Go get a book called The Quest by Dan Yergin. Basically, the future of energy is low-cost energy indefinitely from all sorts of sources we never thought of, like fracking, like shale, and so forth. The world's still an energy-hungry place, but the industry is getting smarter.
Yeah.
I've just been in Perth with the Good Oil Conference. It was a great meeting, and a great classic example is all of the ASX-listed companies kicking around in the Perth Basin.
Yeah.
The assumption was no other gas fields would ever be discovered in the Perth Basin. There's been 2 show up in the last little while.
Right.
Cooper Basin, they've been discovering since the 60s, for example. They're still discovering good gas fields to solve potentially our East Coast gas crisis. So you can be bullish on that sector, even without the price going up very much.
Yeah, well, look, the price on earlier in the week went up 11 or 12%.
Right.
Just on that news.
Right.
So $5-6 on top of what it was, but by now it's come back.
It's given us back
at least 50% already.
Right.
And so damage isn't as big as I expect, and it should be most of it should be back up and running by the end of this month.
Right.
But the interesting thing is these guys were highly trained, obviously. These terrorists, backed by Iran.
Yes.
Our contacts at the Pentagon actually sent us some footage of the
we'll
attack.
put that on the screen.
We'll put that on right now.
Wow, that caused a lot of damage.
All right.
So we've had a bit of research out lately. Talk to us about Revassim, which we published.
Because I've just put some nuts in my mouth.
Okay, so I'll talk about the report I had some oversight for. We've just published on Abundant Produce. ABT is the code, and you can download that one on our website. It's called Abundant Produce because it was a hybrid seed developer. Australia's a great place to develop new vegetable seeds. We have extremes of climate, so if you can breed vegetables that can cope with those sort of things, you're doing well.
Right.
Now, what impresses me about this one isn't seeds; they're actually getting out of the seeds business, but they discovered in their seeds a whole bunch of actives which they could put into nutraceuticals. Potentially, they've got remedies over the counter for migraine and psoriasis,
Right.
which are obviously large market opportunities. In conditions where people often go for over-the-counter stuff as well as whatever prescription medicines they can get hold of.
I've used their sprays for
Right, magnesium based, of course, yeah.
So after playing volleyball, when you're all sore and stuff, use some of their magnesium products.
Right.
It goes away instantly.
Yeah.
So very helpful.
All right.
Yeah, the other report was on Refacim, a semiconductor equipment company. Now, if you look at the semiconductor cycle, we're sort of at the low point. So the expectation is that by the start of next year, 2020, we should clearly see that uptick in capital equipment spending by chip manufacturers. But on top of that, these guys have developed new products very specific for chips for electric vehicles, for instance.
Right.
And that is expected to really take off actually shortly. And they're launching a new product in October officially. And we're quite bullish on this one because there's huge potential for this sort of equipment on top of the cycle. That's
Obviously, electric vehicles have some pretty specific requirements in terms of you can't
power management.
Right,
basically.
of course, right.
So have a look. Both reports are on our website. So still actually interesting. Starting this week, we've got a new item.
Right.
Whatever happened to...
We're asking this week, what happened to Mike Milken? Now, Mark, you and I are about the same age. When we were starting our careers, Mike Milken was big.
Michael Milken was the
junk bond king.
The junk bond king.
Right.
High yielding bonds
Yes.
for used specifically at the heydays of junk bonds for private equity buyouts like KKR. These sorts of guys. The barbarians at the gate used these high yielding bonds for their acquisitions.
Right.
But Michael Milken sort of pioneered it. The product wasn't new.
Yeah.
So late 60s. Products had been around, but he basically built up this market almost by himself at Drexel Burnham, and at the high peak, I think he made in total about $1 billion in commissions at Drexel, just selling this stuff. And the key thing, what he did was they issued the bonds, but also made a market in it. So whoever was buying them could actually trade it on a regular basis.
I mean, this is revolutionary. You had a whole bunch of companies that were too risky for conventional financiers to back, who could get funding with junk bonds and go on to build great businesses.
Yeah.
Mike Malone, for example, was it John Malone, I should say.
John Malone
built the cable industry out of junk bonds.
Yeah.
As did I think Steve Wynn. Basically, built one half of Las Vegas on the back of this as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about bonds. It reminds me of a joke I like to tell. What's the difference between men and investment bonds?
I don't know. Tell me.
Bonds mature.
The ladies will love this one.
Now,
anyway, this
poor old Mike went to jail, right?
He went to jail for insider trading, for market manipulation, fraud.
Right.
He got a sentence, 10-year sentence.
Yes.
He only served 22 months.
Right.
But he had a $600 million fine slapped on him.
Right.
That, at the end of the day, didn't really matter because today, so when we look at what happened to Michael Milken, he's worth $3.7 billion.
Right, and not only that, he's also made a big contribution to turning cancer into a manageable disease condition rather than a death sentence. A lot of charitable donations by the Milken Foundation to develop new cancer drugs. It's fair to say that he's one of the go-to guys in terms of funding the medical economy of the future.
Yeah, and with more than $3 billion, still in the bank.
Yes,
you could probably say he's still a big swinging dick.
Mike, here's from a couple of your fans down under.
Cheers. So this brings us to whatever we're drinking.
Yeah, so this is a interesting little English ale that I picked up recently. It's called My Wife's Bitter. From a little brewery on.
You're divorced, right?
It's not just my wife who's bitter, I got to tell you.
Name a piece of sporting equipment a wife might use to kill her husband.
Bat.
A bat.
A little brew house up at the Gold Coast called Burley Brewing. Now, I imagine there's a bit of a few Englishmen kicking around this brewery. It's got a nice malt taste that you get out of typical English beers. English brewers, by and large, don't care about hops as much as they care about the malts in their beers.
Right.
And you can get a sense of the malt, a bit of a nutty flavour as well in there as well.
So is this the wife in the picture?
I think that's the wife of the founder of the brewery, and they do actually have a very good relationship. He had to get permission from her before he could name a beer after his wife.
Well, she doesn't look bitter, that's for sure.
That's about all we have time for. Happy investors next week, and get all the oil stocks you can.
Cheers.